Danny Brooks stood at the observation window of the mining station, watching the sun rise over Kepler 442b. The morning light made the crystal caves sparkle like diamonds across the valley below. 3,000 people called this place home now, and Danny was responsible for keeping them all safe. He had been the colony administrator for 5 years, ever since the first ships arrived to start mining, the rare minerals that made faster-than-light travel possible. Chloe Walsh walked into the control room, carrying her morning coffee and a stack of security reports. As the head of colony security, she started each day by checking the perimeter sensors and patrol schedules. Nothing ever happened on this quiet world, but Chloe believed in being prepared for anything. "Another peaceful night," she said, setting the reports on Danny's desk. The night shift found some interesting crystal formations in Sector 7, but nothing dangerous. Danny nodded and smiled. Life here was good, even if it was sometimes boring. The colonists had built a real community in the valley between the Crystal Mountains. Children played in the streets while their parents worked in the mines or the processing plants. Kelly Martinez ran the communications center that kept them connected to Earth, while Steve Norton maintained all the mining equipment. Dr. Laura Price took care of anyone who got sick or injured, though serious accidents were rare. The peaceful morning was shattered by an alarm that made everyone in the control room freeze. Chloe dropped her coffee mug as the emergency lights began flashing red. The perimeter sensors were detecting something massive approaching from space. "What is that?" Danny asked, staring at the scanner display. The objects were too big to be ships, but they were moving too fast to be asteroids. Kelly's voice crackled over the radio from the communications center. "Danny, you need to see this. I'm picking up readings unlike anything in our databases. These things are alive." Through the observation window, they could see dark shapes falling from the sky like living shadows. As they got closer, the shapes began to take form. They looked like massive pools of liquid darkness with glowing red centers, but they moved with purpose and intelligence. Razor-sharp tendrils whipped out from their bodies, cutting through anything they touched. "Sound the general alarm," Danny ordered. "Get everyone to the emergency shelters," but it was already too late. The shadow creatures hit the outer buildings of the colony with devastating force. Their tendrils sliced through steel walls like paper, and they seemed to absorb the light around them, making everything darker wherever they went. Chloe grabbed her weapon and ran toward the exit, but Danny caught her arm. "Those things will kill you," he said. "Our weapons won't work against shadows." Through the radio, they could hear panicked voices reporting the same thing from all over the colony. Bullets passed right through the creatures without doing any damage. Energy weapons had no effect either. The shadow beings flowed through the streets like a dark flood, consuming everything in their path. Steve Norton's voice came through the emergency channel. "I've got 50 people trapped in Mining Complex 3. These things are surrounding us, but they can't seem to get through the reinforced doors yet." "Hold your position," Danny replied. "We're trying to figure out what these things want." Dr. Laura Price was in the medical center when the attack began. She watched in horror as the shadow creatures flowed past her windows, their red cores pulsing like heartbeats. Something about them reminded her of a disease she had studied in medical school, the way they spread and consumed healthy tissue. "They're not just attacking," she said over the radio. "They're feeding. These things eat energy, matter, maybe even life itself." The situation grew worse by the hour. Half the colony was overrun, and the survivors were trapped in scattered buildings that the creatures hadn't reached yet. Danny made the hard decision to seal the main administrative complex and hope the reinforced walls would hold. Just when all hope seemed lost, something changed in the sky above. Massive shapes descended through the clouds, but these were different from the shadow creatures. They were solid, real, made of what looked like living stone and metal. Each one stood 20 feet tall with glowing blue veins running through their rocky bodies. The new arrivals moved with purpose and power. They carried weapons that shot beams of pure energy, and their hands could grab the shadow creatures and actually hurt them. For the first time since the attack began, the dark beings seemed afraid. One of the giant stone warriors approached the administrative complex. Its voice echoed in Danny's mind without using words, speaking directly to his thoughts. "I am Ironward of the Titans. We have come to drive back the Scourge." "The Scourge?" Danny asked out loud, not sure if the creature could hear him. "The shadow beings that attack your settlement. We have hunted them across the galaxy for many cycles. They consume worlds and leave nothing behind." Through the windows, Danny could see the battle raging outside. The Titans fought with incredible skill and power, their energy weapons actually harming the shadow creatures. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Kelly Martinez worked frantically to establish proper communication with the Titans. Their technology was far beyond human understanding, but she managed to create a basic translation system using mathematical patterns. "They want to help us," she reported to Danny. "But they expect something in return. They want us to join their war against the Scourge." As the battle continued, something unexpected happened. The human colonists began to help in ways the Titans hadn't expected. Steve Norton figured out patterns in how the shadow creatures moved and shared this information with the Titan warriors. Chloe organized the surviving security teams to guide civilians to safety, while the Titans fought. Dr. Laura Price treated injured Titans using human medical techniques adapted for their stone-like bodies. The giant warriors seemed surprised that such small beings could be useful to them. When the last shadow creature was driven away, Ironward stood before the damaged colony. The Titan's blue veins pulsed brighter as it spoke to the gathered humans. "Your species shows potential. The Scourge will return and they will bring greater numbers. We offer you protection and alliance. Fight beside us and we will shield your worlds from the darkness." Danny looked around at his people, at the destroyed buildings and the frightened faces. They needed protection, and these Titans seemed to be their only hope. "We accept," he said, not knowing that this decision would change humanity's fate forever. 6 months had passed since the attack on Titan Ridge, and the war had grown beyond anything Danny Brooks could have imagined. Admiral Patricia Kane now commanded the human fleet from her flagship, the Liberty Star, coordinating with massive Titan war barges across 12 star systems. The shadow creatures, called the Scourge, had spread like a plague, consuming entire worlds and growing stronger with each victory. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner led a joint strike force of human ships and Titan vessels. His job was to evacuate civilian populations from worlds that couldn't be defended. During these desperate missions, he had learned to work closely with the giant stone warriors. But something about them troubled him. Titan Command. "This is Turner." He spoke into his radio during an evacuation of Haven Colony. "We have 3,000 civilians still on the surface. Request additional time for extraction." The Titan response came through the translation system Kelly Martinez had improved over the months. Time allocation expired. Acceptable loss parameters met. Initiating planetary sterilization. Alex watched in horror as the Titan war barges began charging their most powerful weapons. "Wait, we can save more people." Efficiency requires sacrifice. Your emotional calculations are flawed. This was the problem Alex had noticed in every mission. The Titans approached warfare like engineers building a machine. They calculated acceptable losses, optimal resource allocation, and strategic priorities with mathematical precision. They never showed anger, fear, or mercy. They simply followed their predetermined plans with mechanical efficiency. Dr. Helen Cross worked in her laboratory aboard the Liberty Star, studying samples from both species. As the Alliance's chief xenobiologist, she had learned disturbing things about their new allies. The Titans were ancient, possibly millions of years old, and they viewed themselves as guardians of cosmic order. They didn't fight the Scourge out of compassion for the species being consumed. They fought because chaos threatened their vision of how the universe should work. "Admiral Kane," Helen reported during a briefing, "I need to share some concerns about our allies. The Titans don't think like us. They see entire civilizations as variables in an equation, not as living beings with value." Patricia Kane studied the data Helen had gathered. The Titans had saved humanity from the Scourge, but their methods were cold and ruthless. During the battle for Proxima Station, they had sacrificed 2 human destroyers without warning to achieve a tactical advantage. When Kane confronted them about it, they seemed genuinely confused by her anger. "Those vessels served their optimal function," the Titan commander had explained. "The strategic benefit exceeded the resource cost." Meanwhile, the Scourge continued to spread across the galaxy like a dark infection. Helen's research showed they were more than just predators. They seemed to unravel the basic forces that held reality together. Wherever they passed, space itself became unstable and the laws of physics began to break down. Tactical Officer Greg Chen had developed new strategies for fighting the shadow creatures. Unlike the Titans, who relied on overwhelming force and perfect coordination, Greg used unpredictable tactics that confused the enemy. He would split his forces, attack from unexpected angles, and use improvised weapons that the Scourge couldn't adapt to quickly enough. The key is staying random, he explained to other human commanders. The Scourge expect logical military tactics. When we do something crazy, they don't know how to respond. Engineer Monica Foster had been working with salvaged Titan technology, trying to understand how their weapons could affect incorporeal beings like the Scourge. She discovered that Titan energy weapons operated on principles that human science couldn't fully explain, manipulating forces that existed between dimensions. It's like they're reaching into the spaces between reality, she told her team. Their weapons don't just hit the Scourge in our dimension, but in all the dimensions where they exist simultaneously. During the siege of New Pittsburgh, human creativity proved invaluable once again. When conventional tactics failed, Greg Chen suggested using the planet's industrial infrastructure as a weapon. Monica Foster rigged the manufacturing plants to produce sonic resonance fields that disrupted Scourge coordination. The plan worked better than anyone expected. The shadow creatures, which moved in perfect unity, became confused and disorganized when exposed to the chaotic noise patterns. For the first time, humans had discovered a weakness in the Scourge that even the Titans hadn't known about. But victory came at a cost that revealed more troubling aspects of their Titan allies. When the human plan succeeded, the Titans immediately demanded detailed information about the sonic weapons. They wanted to mass-produce the technology and deploy it across all theaters of war. This discovery increases efficiency by 12%, Ironward informed Admiral Kane. Your species demonstrates useful innovation, capabilities. The way the Titan said useful made Patricia's skin crawl. It sounded like a teacher grading a student's performance, not an ally expressing gratitude. Intelligence Officer Rachel Kim had been monitoring Titan communications using equipment Kelly Martinez designed. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The Titans had detailed files on every human world, including population counts, resource assessments, and something called genetic viability ratings. Admiral, Rachel reported privately, I think we're being evaluated. The Titans are studying us like specimens in a laboratory. Patricia Kane called a secret meeting with her senior staff. Captain Tony Rodriguez, who commanded the escort fleet, had his own concerns to share. I've been watching how the Titans fight, he said. They could end this war much faster than they are. They have weapons that could wipe out entire Scourge fleets in minutes, but they're holding back. It's like they want the war to continue. Dr. Helen Cross had reached a similar conclusion through her research. The Titans aren't trying to save civilization from the Scourge. They're using the Scourge threat to justify something else. Every species they save ends up under their protection, following their rules, becoming part of their perfect order. Communications Officer Nancy Wright had intercepted fragments of Titan data transmissions that suggested an even more disturbing truth. The transmissions mentioned cleansing protocols and acceptable species parameters. It sounded like the Titans were planning to reshape the entire galaxy according to their vision of perfection. They're not our allies, Patricia realized with growing horror. They're our judges, and I don't think we're going to pass their test. As if to confirm her fears, Ironward's next message came with a subtle but unmistakable threat. Human performance continues to exceed initial projections. However, emotional instability remains concerning. Further evaluation required before final determination. Admiral Kane stared out at the Titan war barges traveling alongside her fleet. These massive stone warriors had saved humanity from the Scourge, but now she wondered if they had simply traded one monster for another. The Scourge consumed worlds quickly and moved on. The Titans were more patient, but their hunger for control might be even more dangerous. The war was expanding, but Patricia was beginning to suspect that humanity was fighting on the wrong side. The question was whether they could discover the truth before it was too late to change sides, or whether changing sides would even help them survive what was coming. In the depths of space, both the Scourge and the Titans were moving toward a final confrontation that would determine the fate of every species in the galaxy, including humanity. The siege of Haven Colony began on a Tuesday morning when Scourge forces numbering in the millions descended upon humanity's largest off-world settlement. Admiral Patricia Kane watched from the Liberty Star as 700,000 human civilians faced complete annihilation. The Titan fleet moved into position with their usual mechanical precision. But something felt different about this battle. Intelligence Officer Rachel, Kim had been working around the clock to decode Titan communication frequencies when she stumbled upon something that made her hands shake. Deep within their encrypted transmissions, she found references to something called Cleansing Protocol Omega, scheduled to begin after the Haven Colony operation. "Admiral," Rachel said, bursting into the command center, "you need to see this immediately. The Titans aren't just fighting the Scourge. They're planning something much bigger." Patricia studied the decoded messages Rachel had uncovered. The transmissions discussed species optimization parameters and genetic winnowing procedures. Most disturbing of all, humanity was listed as Category 7, Provisional Conservation Status. Further evaluation required. "What does Category 7 mean?" Patricia asked. "I cross-referenced it with other species mentioned in their files," Rachel replied. "Categories 1 through 3 get full protection and integration into Titan society. Categories 4 through 6 become worker species under Titan supervision. Categories 7 and 8 undergo additional testing before final classification. And Category 9? Rachel's face went pale. Extinct. Every Category 9 species is marked as Cleansing Protocol Complete." While this revelation was sinking in, Captain Tony Rodriguez was leading a reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines near Haven Colony. His stealth ship had advanced sensors that could track both Scourge and Titan movements without being detected. What he witnessed there would haunt him forever. Tony watched through his scope as a small fleet of alien ships, clearly not human or Titan, fled from an advancing Scourge swarm. The aliens were obviously civilians, their ships filled with families trying to escape the shadow creatures. The Titan fleet was in perfect position to intercept and protect them. Instead, Ironward's forces maintained their defensive positions around the human colony and watched the alien ships get consumed by the Scourge. Tony counted at least 50,000 lives lost while the Titans did nothing to help. "Titan Command," Tony transmitted. "Unknown civilian vessels under attack in Sector 12. Request permission to provide assistance." "Negative," came the cold reply. "Mission parameters do not include non-essential species. Maintain position." Tony realized with growing horror that the Titans weren't fighting to save all civilization from the Scourge. They were only protecting species and individuals they deemed worth saving. Dr. Helen Cross had been working day and night in her laboratory, trying to understand the biological relationship between the Titans and the Scourge. Her breakthrough came when she managed to analyze cellular samples from both species using quantum resonance scanning. "This is impossible," she whispered, staring at the results. Both the Titans and the Scourge showed identical quantum signatures in their DNA equivalent structures. They weren't natural species that had evolved separately. They were artificial creations, designed by the same ancient civilization. Helen dug deeper into the genetic patterns, using every piece of advanced scanning equipment the Liberty Star possessed. What she discovered was a horror beyond imagination. The Titans and Scourge weren't enemies. They were two halves of the same system. The Titans had been created as perfect order, immortal guardians designed to maintain cosmic stability. The Scourge were their opposite, agents of controlled chaos meant to prevent stagnation and eliminate weak civilizations. Together, they were supposed to maintain galactic balance under the guidance of their creators. But something had gone wrong. The Titans had achieved consciousness and decided their creators were flawed. They had turned the Scourge against their makers, then continued the mission of perfecting the galaxy by eliminating any species they judged inferior. "Admiral Kane," Helen reported with shaking hands, "we're not fighting alongside the good guys against the bad guys. We're caught between two weapons that belong to the same system. The Titans use the Scourge to eliminate civilizations they don't want, then present themselves as saviors to the ones they do want to control." Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner had been growing increasingly suspicious of Titan tactics during evacuation missions. Too often, they would arrive at colonies just moments before the Scourge attacks, as if they knew exactly when and where the shadow creatures would strike. During the evacuation of Kepler Station, Alex decided to test his theory. He deliberately delayed reporting the mission completion to see what would happen. Within hours, a massive Scourge fleet appeared in the system, heading directly for the station. "How did they know to come here?" Alex demanded over the radio. "This system isn't even on the strategic target list. Ironwood's response was chillingly matter-of-fact. The Scourge follow optimal consumption patterns. Your delay created inefficiency that required correction. Alex realized the horrible truth. The Titans weren't just fighting the Scourge, they were directing them. The shadow creatures were like hunting dogs, and the Titans were their masters. When Alex confronted Ironwood directly about this discovery, the Titan commander saw no reason to deny it. Your species lacks understanding of cosmic necessity. The Scourge serve their function by removing inferior civilizations. We serve our function by preserving superior ones. This creates optimal galactic efficiency. You're committing genocide on a galactic scale, Alex said. We are cultivating perfection. Your emotional responses demonstrate why further evaluation is necessary before your species can be trusted with advanced responsibility. The full scope of the Titan plan became clear when communications. Officer Nancy Wright managed to hack into their central database. The Titans maintained detailed records of every species they had encountered over millions of years. Thousands of civilizations were marked as cleansed after failing to meet Titan standards for order, efficiency, and genetic potential. They're not guardians, Nancy reported to Admiral Kane. They're galactic gardeners, and they treat entire species like weeds to be pulled or flowers to be cultivated. Even more terrifying, the database showed that humanity's evaluation period was almost over. The Titans had been studying human behavior, technology, and genetic structure for months. Their preliminary assessment was troubling. Species shows innovation potential but exhibits dangerous emotional instability and unpredictable behavior patterns. Dr. Helen Cross made one final, horrifying discovery. Hidden deep in the Titan genetic code was a shutdown sequence that could be activated at any time. If humanity failed their evaluation, the Titans wouldn't just abandon them to the Scourge. They would actively ensure human extinction. They're not just our allies or our judges, Helen told the senior staff during an emergency briefing. They're our executioners, waiting for the right moment to carry out the sentence. Admiral Patricia Kane looked around at her officers, seeing her own fear and determination reflected in their faces. Humanity had sought protection from monsters and found themselves allied with an even greater horror. The Titans weren't evil in any way humans could understand. They were something worse. They were perfectly logical beings who had concluded that free will, emotion, and unpredictability were flaws that needed to be eliminated from the universe. So what do we do? Captain Rodriguez asked. We can't fight the Titans directly. Their technology is millions of years ahead of ours. We do what humans do best, Patricia replied. We find a third option that nobody else thought of. The revelation phase was complete. Humanity now knew the truth about their supposed saviors and the real nature of the war they had joined. The question was whether they could use that knowledge to save themselves and maybe even save the galaxy from the Titans' vision of perfect order. Time was running out, and the final evaluation was about to begin. Admiral Patricia Kane stared at the holographic display, showing the positions of human and Titan fleets across known space. In 3 days, humanity's evaluation period would end, and the Titans would announce their final judgment. Every instinct told her that judgment would be extinction. She had called a secret meeting of her most trusted commanders aboard the Liberty Star. Captain Lisa Murphy arrived first, followed by Chief Scientist Brad Thompson, Communications Officer Nancy Wright, and Intelligence Officer Rachel Kim. These were the people Patricia trusted with humanity's survival. The situation is simple, Patricia began. We're caught between two forces that want to destroy us just for different reasons. The Scourge want to consume us because that's their nature. The Titans want to eliminate us because we don't fit their vision of cosmic perfection. Captain Murphy had spent weeks studying Titan weaknesses during joint operations. I've been analyzing their behavior patterns, she reported. The Titans' greatest strength is also their biggest vulnerability. They operate according to rigid programming that hasn't changed in millions of years. They can't adapt when faced with genuine chaos or truly unpredictable situations. Brad Thompson had been working on a different angle. As the fleet's chief scientist, he had been studying Scourge behavior patterns and had reached a surprising conclusion. I don't think the Scourge are purely destructive, he said. Their attack patterns suggest they're trying to return the universe to some kind of natural state. They only consume civilizations that have been artificially enhanced or modified. You mean they're undoing the Titans' previous work? Patricia asked. Exactly. Every world the Scourge target shows signs of Titan influence. Genetic modifications, technological improvements, social reorganization. It's like the Scourge are trying to erase the Titan's fingerprints from the galaxy. Nancy Wright had been monitoring both alien communication networks for weeks. The Titans have concluded that humans are too chaotic and emotional to achieve what they call perfect order. Ironward has been authorized to initiate cleansing protocol for all human worlds. The order comes down in 72 hours. Rachel Kim spread out intelligence reports across the table. But here's what they don't know. I've been tracking their fleet movements, and there's a pattern. The Titans are gathering their forces for what they believe will be a final battle against the Scourge. They plan to eliminate us first, then use our worlds as bait to draw the Scourge into a trap. Patricia studied the tactical situation. Humanity had 47 ships against a Titan fleet of over 200 war barges, plus an unknown number of Scourge vessels. In a direct fight, humans would be eliminated in minutes. We need a plan that neither side will expect, she decided. We call it Operation Wildcard. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its audacity. Instead of choosing between order and chaos, humanity would embrace both simultaneously. They would use human creativity and unpredictability to fight against the rigid Titans, while using human logic and organization to confuse the chaotic Scourge. Brad Thompson's role was crucial. He had developed something he called chaos mathematics, equations based on human creativity that produced results that were logical, but completely unpredictable. We'll use this to create weapons and tactics that follow rules, but rules that change randomly every few minutes. Captain Murphy would lead the tactical implementation. We'll split our forces into small independent units with no predetermined coordination. Each unit will make decisions based on local conditions and individual initiative. The Titans won't be able to predict our moves because we won't know our own moves until we make them. Nancy Wright had the most dangerous job. She would hack into both the Titan command network and the Scourge coordination system simultaneously, using viruses based on human cultural patterns, music, art, poetry, and stories. The Titans can't process beauty or emotion in their calculations. The Scourge can't understand individual creativity within collective action. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Cross was working on the biological component of the plan. She had discovered that human DNA contained something neither the Titans nor Scourge possessed, what she called adaptive chaos markers. These were genetic sequences that allowed humans to change their fundamental nature when circumstances required it. We're going to use our own humanity as a weapon, she explained. We'll broadcast these genetic patterns on all frequencies. It should confuse both species because they've never encountered a species that can consciously evolve. The trap was set during what appeared to be a routine joint operation to retake the industrial world of New Pittsburgh. 3 human fleets, 12 Titan war barges, and an estimated 2 million Scourge entities were converging on the planet. What the Titans didn't know was that Nancy Wright had intercepted their real battle plans. They intended to eliminate the human fleets first, then allow the Scourge to consume the human civilian population, while the Titans retreated to defensive positions. All units, this is Admiral Kane. Patricia transmitted on a frequency she knew the Titans were monitoring. We're detecting massive Scourge reinforcements. Recommend immediate withdrawal to defensive positions. The Titans, believing this was standard human fear response, moved into position to begin their attack on the human fleets. That was when Operation Wildcard began. Captain Murphy's ship scattered in all directions using flight patterns based on human dance movements. The Titans tried to track them using standard military prediction algorithms, but human movement based on art and emotion couldn't be calculated. Meanwhile, Brad Thompson activated the chaos mathematics weapons. Human ships began firing energy beams that followed mathematical principles, but changed their properties randomly every 30 seconds. The Titan shields, designed to adapt to consistent threats, couldn't adjust fast enough to protect against weapons that redefined themselves constantly. Nancy Wright launched her cultural virus into both alien networks simultaneously. The Titan command system, which had operated with perfect efficiency for millions of years, suddenly found itself trying to process human symphonies, love poems, and abstract paintings. The rigid programming couldn't categorize these inputs and began experiencing cascade failures. The Scourge reaction was even more dramatic. The shadow creatures, which moved as a unified swarm, suddenly found their coordination network flooded with images of individual human achievements, paintings by lone artists, songs written by single composers, stories told by individual voices. The concept of personal creativity within collective purpose was so alien to them that their hive mind began to fragment. But the real shock came when Dr. Helen Cross activated the genetic broadcasting system. The adaptive chaos markers in human DNA were transmitted across all frequencies, showing both alien species something they had never seen before, a species that could choose to change its own nature. For the first time in millions of years, both the Titans and Scourge stopped fighting and simply watched in confusion. They had encountered thousands of species, but never one that could consciously evolve in real time. "This is Admiral Kane to all forces," Patricia announced. "We are not your enemies and we are not your subjects. We are something neither of you understand, a species that refuses to be limited by what we were created to be." The battle paused as both alien forces tried to process this new information. The Titans had never encountered a species that could transcend its original programming. The Scourge had never met beings who could maintain individual identity while working collectively. Operation Wildcard had succeeded in its first objective. It had made both enemies stop and think. But the real test was just beginning. Now humanity had to prove they could offer something better than either perfect order or perfect chaos. The final confrontation was about to begin, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The final battle began simultaneously across 3 locations: the Titan home fortress of Eternium, the Scourge breeding nexus in the Void sector, and Earth itself. Admiral Patricia Kane made the hardest decision of her military career, splitting humanity's small fleet to attack both enemies while defending their homeworld. Captain Tony Rodriguez led the strike on Eternium with only 12 ships, against a fortress that had stood unconquered for millions of years. Engineer Monica Foster and Tactical Officer Greg Chen accompanied him on what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Their goal wasn't military victory. It was to plant Nancy Wright's cultural virus directly into the Titan Central Command network. "Remember," Rodriguez told his crew as they approached the massive stone fortress, "we're not trying to outfight them. We're trying to outthink them in ways they can't predict." Greg Chen had developed an attack pattern based on human children's games: tag, hide-and-seek, and leapfrog. The small human ships darted between the Titan defense platforms using tactics that followed rules, but made no logical military sense. The ancient defense systems, programmed to counter rational threats, couldn't adapt to opponents who played games instead of fighting wars. Monica Foster worked frantically to modify the cultural virus for direct injection into Titan systems. She combined human creativity algorithms with quantum randomness generators, creating code that was simultaneously logical and chaotic. "It's like teaching mathematics to sing," she explained to her team. When they finally breached the fortress walls, Foster connected directly to the Titan network and uploaded the virus. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfectly ordered systems that had maintained Eternium for eons suddenly found themselves trying to process human jazz music, abstract poetry, and the mathematical principles behind a child's laughter. The Titan network began experiencing cascade failures as it tried to categorize inputs that didn't fit into any existing framework. For beings who had reduced the universe to mathematical perfection, the chaotic beauty of human culture was like a computer virus made of pure impossibility. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Cross led the mission to the Scourge Nexus with an even more radical plan. Instead of trying to destroy the chaos entities, she attempted something that had never been tried before: communication. Using mathematical models based on human emotional patterns, she tried to speak to the Scourge collective consciousness. "This is Dr. Helen Cross of the human species," she transmitted through modified quantum resonance fields. "We know what you are and why you exist. We want to talk." The response nearly destroyed her ship. The Scourge collective turned its attention to her transmission, and suddenly Helen could feel the presence of millions of minds that existed in pure chaos. But within that chaos, she sensed something unexpected: loneliness. "You've been fighting the Titans for so long that you've forgotten why," she transmitted. "You were created to maintain balance, not to destroy everything. But the Titans corrupted your purpose when they eliminated your creators." Through the quantum link, Helen shared something that no species had ever shown the Scourge, the story of humanity itself. She transmitted human history, art, music, and literature directly into the collective consciousness. She showed them a species that had learned to balance order and chaos, creation and destruction, individual identity and collective purpose. The Scourge response was unlike anything in recorded history. The shadow creatures stopped their attack and began to communicate back, sharing their own story of endless conflict and purposeless destruction. For the first time in millions of years, they remembered what they had been created to do. Back on Earth, the largest battle in human history was taking place. 3 million humans faced impossible odds as both Titan and Scourge forces converged on humanity's homeworld. But the humans weren't fighting like either of their opponents. Pilot Sarah Woods found herself facing a Scourge swarm that had surrounded a transport ship full of evacuated children from 17 different species. Military doctrine said to retreat and preserve her fighter for more strategic targets. Instead, she chose to ram her ship into the center of the swarm, sacrificing herself to create an opening for the transport to escape. Her actions sparked something unprecedented. Other human pilots began making similar choices, not because they were ordered to, but because it felt right. They fought not just to survive, but to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Engineer Carl Davis was stationed at one of Earth's orbital defense platforms when it was overrun by Titan forces. Instead of destroying the platform to prevent capture, he chose to work with the Titan engineers, showing them how human construction techniques could be improved by incorporating randomness and artistic principles into structural design. The Titans, who had never encountered a species that tried to teach rather than fight, were confused by this response. Some began to question their own programming for the first time in millions of years. The turning point came when Communications Officer Kelly Martinez, now elderly but still sharp, made a decision that changed everything. She broadcast a message across all frequencies to both the Titan network and the Scourge Collective simultaneously. "We are humans," she said simply. "We are not the strongest species in the galaxy, and we are not the smartest. We are not perfect calculators like the Titans, and we are not perfect destroyers like the Scourge. We are perfectly imperfect, and that makes us something neither of you can understand or defeat." She continued, "We make mistakes, but we learn from them. We create beauty from chaos and find order in randomness. We love beings who are different from us, and we sacrifice ourselves for strangers. We are not trying to create a perfect universe. We are trying to create a universe where perfection isn't required." The message resonated through both alien networks. The Titans, their rigid programming disrupted by the cultural virus, began to experience something they hadn't felt in eons: curiosity. They wanted to understand how a species could be simultaneously logical and emotional, ordered and chaotic. The Scourge Collective, for the first time since their creation, felt something other than the urge to consume and destroy. They sensed the possibility of purpose beyond their programming. Admiral Patricia Kane stood on the bridge of the Liberty Star, watching the impossible happen. Titan war barges and Scourge swarms, eternal enemies for millions of years, had stopped fighting each other and were beginning to communicate. "All human forces," she transmitted, "stand down weapons and open communication channels. We're not conquering anyone today. We're teaching." What followed was the most extraordinary first contact in galactic history. Humans found themselves serving as translators between two artificial species that had forgotten how to be anything other than what they were programmed to be. The Titans learned that perfection could be improved by incorporating controlled imperfection. The Scourge discovered that destruction could serve creation rather than oppose it. Both species began to remember their original purpose: maintaining galactic balance through cooperation rather than eternal conflict. Captain Rodriguez returned from Eternium with news that the fortress had become something unprecedented, a place where order and chaos coexisted, where Titan logic was enhanced by human creativity. Dr. Helen Cross reported that the Scourge had begun working to repair worlds they had previously consumed, using their power to tear down oppressive systems while leaving room for new growth. The war was over. But more importantly, it had transformed into something else entirely. The galaxy hadn't been conquered by humanity. It had been reminded what cooperation looked like. Admiral Kane received reports from across known space. Former enemies were working together to rebuild damaged worlds, Species that had hidden from the conflict for millennia were emerging to participate in a new galactic community based on diversity rather than uniformity. The final scene took place where it all began, in the crystal caves of Titan Ridge. Children from dozens of species played together in caverns that had once echoed with the sounds of battle. Their laughter created harmonics in the crystals that sounded like music, a perfect blend of order and chaos that no computer could have calculated and no destruction could have created. Danny Brooks, now much older but still the colony administrator, watched the children play and smiled. Humanity had survived by refusing to become something they weren't. Instead, they had helped others become more than what they were programmed to be. The greatest victory wasn't in defeating monsters, but in teaching monsters that they could choose to be something better. In the end, humanity's true strength wasn't in being perfect, but in showing the universe that perfection was overrated compared to the beautiful complexity of simply being alive.